Cliff Richard finally speaks the truth about George Harrison when he is 85. Harry Roger Webb was born Cliff Richard on. He was born on October 14, 1940, in Lucknow, India, and went on to become one of the most famous and well-loved figures in British popular music history. Cliff's family moved back to England after India became independent in 1948. The young boy had to deal with the problems of post-war Britain. He grew up in a small house in Cheshunt, Hertfordshire, and fell in love with American rock and roll, especially the music of Elvis Presley and Little Richard. That desire was the spark that turned a normal boy into one of the UK's most famous musicians. By the end of the 1950s, he was in charge of a cultural revolution that brought rock and roll to British audiences before the Beatles ever formed. Cliff Richard's first hit, Move It, came out in 1958 and made him famous. People today think of this song as the first real British rock and roll song. With its rough guitar chords and fast beat, Move It made Cliff the UK's equivalent to Elvis Presley. He and his band, the Drifters, which later became known as the Shadows, became famous and started a new era in music. The way Cliff's soft voice and the Shadows' amazing instrumentals worked together established a sound that would rule the charts for years. They worked together to make a number of singles, such as Living Doll, Travel in Light, Please Don't Tease, and The Young Ones. All of these songs were very popular with teens in the 1960s and made Cliff a teen idol. Even as musical styles changed, Cliff Richard stayed popular and respected during the British invasion of the mid-1960s. Cliff changed with the times. Unlike many of his peers who faded when the Beatles became popular, he could sing rock and roll, pop ballads, and even church music because he had a clean-cut look and a voice that could do a lot of different things. By the end of the 1960s, he was trying out a softer sound and had hits like Congratulations, which he sang at the Eurovision Song Contest in 1968. He came in second place, but the song became a hit all over the world. One of Cliff's trademarks was how long he lived. He wasn't just a star for a short time. He was an artist who evolved with his fans throughout the years. Cliff Richard made a huge comeback in the 1970s and 1980 Seconds. He became famous with songs like Devil Woman, We Don't Talk Anymore, and Dreaming. He was always on the radio and TV, and he kept changing himself while maintaining true to his wholesome, positive image. What made him stand out was how well he could combine spirituality with showmanship. Cliff never used scandal or rebellion to stay in the news. Instead, his love of music and strong Christian faith kept him grounded and earned him respect beyond the entertainment world. His conversion to Christianity in the mid-1960s had a big impact on his later work. It inspired several gospel albums and gave his career a moral compass that millions of followers around the world could relate to. Cliff has done an incredible amount of work. He has sold more than 250 million records around the world during his more than 60-year career, making him one of the best-selling music artists of all time. He is the only musician to have had a top 5 hit in the UK in every decade, from the 1950 seconds to the 2010 seconds. This shows how flexible and popular he is. He was made a knight in 1995, which made him Sir Cliff Richard, the first rock star to get this accolade. He has won many prizes, including Ivor Novello medals and Brit Awards, for his music and his work for charity. Cliff has been a symbol of hard work, dedication, and class, in addition to his charts and awards. A man who was able to keep a good name in a business known for scandal and excess. Even though he has been in the public glare for decades, Cliff Richard has always been a very private person. He never got married because he wanted to focus on his beliefs, friends, and music. He has lived in the UK, Barbados, and Portugal over the years. When he's not singing, he likes to live a peaceful life away from the spotlight. Fans and peers alike love him for his modesty and kindness. People who have worked with him say he is a consummate professional who is always on time, ready, and respectful of everyone on set or in the studio. Cliff's vigor and excitement have not faded even as he has gotten older. He still goes on tour, makes records, and meets fans all around the world. His concerts are full with nostalgia, excitement, and deep gratitude. They indicate that he still loves what he does and is thankful for the people who have supported him for generations. He doesn't just sing when he gets on stage. He celebrates a lifetime of music and memories he has shared with millions of people. Cliff Richard proved once again in November 2013 that his musical magic had not faded with time when he launched the amazing rock and roll songbook. a lively tribute to the golden age that originally shaped his amazing career. The CD was a nostalgic but lively compilation of timeless rock songs that caught the spirit of the genre that defined the early days of British music. Fans of all ages were thrilled to hear Cliff's unique voice bring new life to classic tunes by the artists that influenced him. The album did really well. It quickly rose to number 7 on the UK Albums Chart and was immediately certified gold. This showed that Cliff Richard was still one of the most popular musicians in Britain, even after more than 50 years in the spotlight. In 2016, 3 years later, Cliff released another upbeat project called Just Fabulous Rock and Roll. This album was another celebration of the music that made him famous. It combined the fire of youth with the skill of a seasoned performer. It included a mix of new takes on old songs and sincere tributes, like a heartbreaking virtual duet with his late buddy Elvis Presley that moved people all over the world. The album's success showed that Cliff is still quite popular. It reached number 4 on the UK Albums Chart and sold more than 100,000 copies across the country. Few artists have been able to stay so successful for so long. But Cliff's voice, which was always beautiful, and his love for his work shone through. Cliff didn't show any indications of slowing down in the years that followed. He published Rise Up in 2018, his first album of original songs in almost 14 years. It was a great return to songwriting. The name of the album showed how strong he was and how he could face problems with grace and resolve. Fans and critics alike liked its positive messages and lively music. And it reached the UK top 10 again. After this achievement, he made songs. The Air That I Breathe in 2020 is a beautifully put-together collection that shows how versatile he is and how deeply he connects with the songs he sings. In 2022, he celebrated the holidays with Christmas with Cliff, a lovely CD that combined seasonal pleasure with his usual grace and honesty. Every one of these albums showed that Cliff Richard's music is timeless. His music is still relevant, meaningful, and full of delight because he can change himself while staying true to his roots. He is still in the top 10 more than 60 years after his first album, which is something few other artists can say with these final recordings. Cliff not only paid tribute to the long heritage of rock and roll, but he also reinforced his place in it, standing tall as one of the most important and long-lasting artists in modern music history. Sir Cliff Richard has been one of Britain's most popular entertainers for decades, a vocalist whose career has lasted for more than 6 amazing decades. With a voice that defined generations and a personality that emanated warmth and grace, he became a symbol of perseverance in an ever-changing music industry. Cliff is now 85 years old and is looking back on his amazing life with a new sense of honesty and introspection, especially concerning his friendship with George Harrison, another British superstar. They met during important times in the history of music, and the tale Cliff relates now shows that their bond was far deeper and more intricate than most fans thought. In a rare recent interview, Cliff said, "George was one of the most quietly spiritual people I've ever met. He didn't talk about it much, but you could feel it in him, that peace of mind and desire for significance that never left him." Cliff was already a big figure when the two men met in the early 1960s. At that time, the Beatles were still working their way up to prominence. Cliff and his band, The Shadows, were already pioneers of British rock and roll. They opened the door for bands like the Beatles. George, the silent Beatle, looked up to Cliff since he was successful and professional at a young age. Cliff said that their initial meeting wasn't very glamorous, but he liked how humble and talented George was as a musician. "I recall thinking how shy George was when I saw him backstage in Liverpool. He didn't say much, but when he smiled, you could tell that a lot was going on in his head." Their friendship grew quietly over time, not because of celebrity, but because they both respected one another's art and spirituality. Both men thought a lot about themselves. Cliff's faith was based on Christianity, but George's path took him to Eastern philosophy and meditation. "We used to talk about God, but in quite different ways." Cliff said, "I was talking about Christianity and George was looking into Hinduism, but I think we both wanted the same thing: peace, love, and truth." He once said to me, "Cliff, all paths lead to the same place if your heart is right, and I will never forget that." Cliff said that these talks were some of the most important ones he had ever had. There was no disagreement or debate, even though they had different beliefs. Just respect and interest. As they both became more famous, their lives changed in different ways. Cliff kept up his long, clean-cut image by making music that matched his beliefs. George, on the other hand, became one of the most important cultural figures of the 20th century with the Beatles. But Cliff always stood up for George's search for meaning in life. He said in a hushed voice that people didn't always understand him. People assumed he was acting strange or trying to get away from stardom, but he was just looking for peace of mind. When the world keeps yelling your name, it's hard to find that type of peace. Cliff remembered one night very clearly when the two of them met at a charity event or an industry gathering. He played the sitar for a small group of us in the corner of the room, and I remember being completely spellbound. It wasn't about how well they did. It was about feelings. He was saying something very deep and honest. Cliff said that George's music made him think differently about his own work and made him want to produce songs that had more personal and spiritual meaning. Cliff stated he felt a great sorrow after George died too soon in 2001. It impacted me more than I thought it would when I received the news. George wasn't someone I saw every week or even every year, but he was a big part of my life. I looked up to him not just as a Beatle, but as a man who stayed true to himself. Cliff also thought about George's legacy of love and peace, which he thinks the modern music industry has lost. He told us that music should originate from the heart, not from the charts. I wish more young artists knew that today. Cliff also said that he was jealous of George's ability to get away from the spotlight in some aspects. George was brave enough to say, "I've had enough. I never really got that done. I could have loved performing too much, but I liked how he could go into his garden, play his guitar, and just be himself." Cliff found it encouraging and maybe a bit scary that he was so humble. A reminder that fame can both lift you up and trap you. Cliff, who is now 85, says he feels grateful more than anything else when he looks back on his life of music, faith, and friendship. "I'm glad I got to know him. The real George, not the Beatle or the emblem, but the kind man who, like the rest of us, aspired to understand life." His voice shook a little as he said, "We were two very different souls walking the same road, and I'll always be grateful for that connection." Cliff Richard's thoughts on George Harrison in his later years show that he not only admired another artist, but also had a deep grasp of how people connect with each other, one that goes beyond fame, music, and even religion. Their friendship, which was quiet yet lasted, shows the shared spirit of two men who wanted peace, not just in their music, but also in their souls. And today, with the honesty that only comes with age and wisdom, Cliff's comments are a touching monument to a friendship that still lives on in the history of music.